The American Revolution, like any and all wars, has its stories, legends, and mysteries. One such legend of the American Revolution is the legend of Molly Pitcher. This famous woman who, when her husband was wounded fulfilling his mission as an artilleryman, stepped in to help man the cannon. The dilemma in the legend of Molly Pitcher is that nobody really knows who she was. To further complicate things, the name Molly Pitcher is not just a name of a person you call for help. You see, on the battlefield, a pitcher was something very important. It was important to the men, and more importantly, to the men who manned the artillery pieces. Simply put, a pitcher held water. Water for the men to quench their thirst, and water to cool the cannons, keeping them from exploding due to their constant use. So to call the pitcher was a common word, often heard. Molly, or the name Molly, as described by Marilyn Scott Mason of the Christian Science Monitor, was a widely used nickname for both the names Mary and Margaret, both which were very common at the time. The men would affectionately call the water carriers Molly Pitcher. As historian Emily Tepe puts it, Molly Pitcher was a collective term, much like G.I. Joe. It served as a common label for hundreds of women who served not only as ammunition wives, but as launderers, cooks, and nurses. For me, the truly stunning thing is that there's very little recorded fact or historical analysis to draw from on this subject. To say that I find it disheartening is an understatement. Knowing what I know about military history, up until modern times, the placement of women in the theater of war was almost always a necessity. As Ms. Tepe points out, women had a variety of duties in and around the camp. It would be safe to say that without them, the army could not field and the battle could not be fought. Historians agree that there was no one specifically named Molly Pitcher, but they do have their suspicions. The first possibility is a woman named Mary Ludwig, the second is a woman named Margaret Corbin, and the third is named Deborah Sampson. All three have been thought to be the original Molly Pitcher. Most of the stories believe Molly to be Mary Ludwig, whose husband served as an artilleryman in the Continental Army. He was present at Valley Forge in 1777, as well as the Battle of Monmouth. In her story, her husband was wounded, and having no one to replace him, she took his place on the line. With regards to Margaret Corbin, her husband was also an artilleryman. He too was wounded in action, and it is reported that Margaret took his place as well at the Battle of Fort Washington in 1776. However, with Margaret's story, there is more of a footprint. It is said that she was wounded in action in the arm, and that she was awarded $50 pension by the state of Pennsylvania in 1779. The third possibility is Deborah Sampson. Her story is slightly different. Deborah's commitment to the Revolution was such that she took it upon herself to play the part of the colonial soldier. Under the name of Robert Shirtliff, she served in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment. And it's interesting to note in this, as pointed out by Dale Anderson in his book Soldiers and Sailors in the American Revolution, that within this regiment she served in the Light Infantry Company. And light infantry companies were elite troops, and they were usually picked because they were taller and stronger than the average men of the day. He believed that her disguise was more likely to succeed because no one would be looking for a woman among specially chosen soldiers. She was eventually placed on the Massachusetts Invalid Pension Roll in 1805. As one can see, trying to pin down the facts concerning this topic, or the topic of women in the Revolution, is like trying to nail Jello to a plank. It was difficult. Some of what we know can be validated, such as names and pension rolls and whatnot, and eyewitness testimony from some of the most learned men of the day, such as doctors of medicine. Most of what we know are stories and loose accounts. How important are these stories? They are very important, for the simple fact that some of them are true, and the others exist because there's a kernel of truth to it. These women did heroic things, risked their lives, and physically suffered because of it. This alone makes their story important and should be told. And there should be more to research and to find. I was surprised. I found it very interesting and very illuminating. Thank you for your time.